Hey guys, I'm so glad you could join me because I got a critically important video today about the most dangerous politician in America. It's not Donald Trump, it's in fact J.D. Vance. We know this man is an unprincipled, elitist, a fraudster, and someone who mocks the victims of Russian war crimes in Ukraine. But there's something much more dangerous than that. You see, he's the architect, according to his own words, of a political movement that, if it comes into power, will lead to the deaths of millions of people worldwide. It's not hyperbole, and it's based upon irrefutable statistics, as well as Mr. Vance's own description of this movement. So I'm going to show you 5 truths about J.D. Vance, and I'm going to prove everything I just said. So sit down, buckle up, and let's learn why this man cannot get reelected. Truth number 1 about J.D. Vance, he is not a common man. In fact, his entire persona as being this blue-collar guy who's going to stick up for the middle-income worker in his home state of Ohio is a total fraud and a total farce. Facts. He's a Yale-educated lawyer who made millions of dollars working at private equity firms with Peter Thiel. Private equity firms, in simplistic terms, are those vulturous companies that pick apart American jobs, American companies, and send manufacturing overseas in the pursuit of cold profit. How do we know this? Well, not only is that where he made millions of dollars, not only is he completely disconnected from those people in Ohio as an Ivy League elitist, he's also voted to screw them over every chance he's gotten, and he's beholden to millions of dollars in campaign contributions from Silicon Valley billionaires. His super PAC got $10 million during his Senate race from Peter Thiel and friends. Okay, on top of that, when there was a chance for him to vote for Ukraine aid and to help the good manufacturing jobs at the Lima tank plant in Ohio, which refurbished those M1 Abrams tanks that went over to Ukraine, he voted against it and did everything he could to undermine it. When in fact, on top of that, and this is the most disgusting of all perhaps, there was legislation that was being discussed that would eliminate the liability protections that tech companies like Google and others have against being sued. He wanted to eliminate those liability protections to prevent Google and other big tech companies from being sued. But he included an exception for Rumble, which is a YouTube competitor. He wanted to exclude Rumble. Why? He claimed it was because they're a young startup. In fact, it's because he's got millions of dollars in stock in that company along with his Silicon Valley buddies. So you see, when it comes down to it, he's just a rich, elitist scumbag trying to screw over the common man while claiming to be their friend. This is J.D. Vance. Truth number 2 about J.D. Vance, he is totally unprincipled and will say and do anything for power. Case in point, prior to deciding to run for that Senate seat in Ohio, he described Donald Trump as America's Hitler, as a racist, and as a threat to democracy. He was a staunch never-Trumper. However, when he finally ran for that seat and was behind in the polling, 3rd or 4th, he decided he should beg and grovel like the worm and the creature that he truly is, and went to Donald Trump, kissed the ring to get his endorsement, because all that matters to J.D. Vance is winning and power. He got the endorsement, and now he is Donald Trump's henchman in the Senate, doing whatever he wants, no matter how ridiculous or crazy it might be, and he wants to be his vice presidential candidate. So ask yourself what it would take for you to support Hitler and want to be his running mate. And that tells you everything you need to know about J.D. Vance. The man simply has no character whatsoever. Truth number 3 about J.D. Vance, he's a total liar and completely disingenuous. On your screen right now is when he went on the Steve Bannon show, and in an effort to help Russia and hurt the victims of war crimes, to hurt our ally Ukraine, he claimed, falsely of course, that the Biden administration was going to cut Social Security and take that money to give to Ukraine. Okay, that would be a crazy lie by itself. But no, he went one step further. This is J.D. Vance we're talking about. He knows no limits. He claimed it was going to be given to Ukraine, and specifically Zelensky, so Zelensky could buy a yacht. Now, this seems ridiculous and farcical, but he said it with a straight face because he knows there's enough misinformed people who are prejudiced against the Biden administration that some will believe him, and he's hoping to use his lies to gain pressure. It's not the only thing he's lied about. He constantly lies about Ukraine. He constantly lies about Zelensky. He constantly lies about alleged corruption in Ukraine when we're sitting here as if we have any room to talk with our president facing dozens and dozens of felonies who try to overturn the election. This is J.D. Vance. Dishonesty, lies, and he loves to not address the substance of what's made in an argument in order to make it about insults or something else, because he cannot argue the truth. 4th truth about J.D. Vance, he's a massive jerk. I'll be short and sweet. He's sarcastic about literally everything. He can't have a good faith policy disagreement and discussion. No, it's always got to be insulting the war crimes victims, insulting the person who's engaging with him or challenging him on something that he said. Again, this is who he is. He cannot have a good faith debate because it's not about good faith. He operates in bad faith. He actually called Gary Kasparov, the guy who beat his supercomputer at chess, not intelligent the other day. This is JD Vance, a complete jerk. Okay, the fifth and final truth about JD Vance is the most important part of this video, and that is he is the architect of the most dangerous political movement in this nation's history. It is a form of extreme isolationism known as the New Right, and it's going to have three effects. Number one, it's going to kill millions of people. It's not hyperbole. I'm going to prove it irrefutably in this video. Number two, it's going to be a foreign policy and economic disaster for the United States. And number three, it's going to replace morality and right versus wrong, you know, those enlightened concepts, and replace it with a doctrine of might versus right, and violence is okay as long as you win. That is going to undo so much sacrifice and so many deaths and so much suffering and so much hard work that has been spent throughout our history to construct a more just, a more fair, and more beautiful world. So let's look at each of these three things that are going to happen, and I'm going to prove it, I'm going to show it, and we're going to see why this man is the most dangerous both in American politics and perhaps in this country as a whole right now. So when I said that JD Vance's philosophy of foreign policy and international relations would kill millions of people, what do I base that on? It's not hyperbole, it's based upon the simple components of his doctrine and the result of what it would have through the elimination of U.S. foreign aid. It's just one component. So how does he describe his doctrine, this New Right doctrine, this extreme isolationism? Basically what he says, and this is in a Politico article that's linked in the description of this video, is that it would make every nation 100% responsible for their own economic and military security, meaning the United States gives no money to anybody. We, in fact, eliminate foreign aid. So what does foreign aid do and how much does it cost? Well, it's only 1% of the budget. I know that it's a populist thing to say we shouldn't be giving money to other countries, but in fact, we have a moral responsibility to do that. If you're the rich guy on the block, if you're the one with, an excess of food and clothing and shelter and everything else that someone needs to survive, and you have a bunch of hurricane victims on your street who have no home and it's snowing outside, JD Vance is saying, let them freeze, let them starve, let them die, kids included. I don't think it's the kind of nation we want to be. But let's go through and look at statistics. U.S. foreign aid is 1%, that's right, 1% of the U.S. budget each year. And how effective is it? Well, it has saved 6 million kids from malaria since the year 2000. It's saved millions and millions of kids, including 500,000 per year, who would have died from polio, from dying since the time the polio vaccine came into effect in the late 1970s, early 80s, and we had polio vaccination programs throughout Africa and other developing nations. 2.4 million more babies would have been born with HIV if it had not been for U.S. foreign aid. 17 million more people would have been dead from HIV and AIDS had it not been for U.S. foreign aid. 740 million more people would still be living in poverty throughout the world over the past 30 years had it not been for U.S. foreign aid. 3 million people more a year would die from a lack of clean drinking water were it not for U.S. foreign aid. I could go on and on and on and on, but you will kill millions of people who live in developing nations who have no choice where they're born, nations that are hit like Haiti with natural disasters, even our friends like Japan, which are hit with tsunamis, or places like Thailand that may have a monsoon. Whatever it may be, JD Vance wants to leave these nations to starve, to die, and to have no help whatsoever. This is wrong, and it's going to kill people. Absolutely proven. And think about what the benefit of this is. Why would we get rid of this 1% spend on our national budget in order to save millions and millions and millions of totally innocent children? Well, it gets JD Vance elected. That's it. And it sounds good in some populist speech to a bunch of idiots who don't think about the full picture of the world nor our obligations on this planet. There's no benefit, and it kills millions of people. This is how bloodthirsty, greedy, disgusting, repulsive, and soulless JD Vance truly is. The second impact I said would result from JD Vance's foreign policy, doctrine, or philosophy coming into play is that it would have a devastating consequences for U.S. national security and intelligence collection. And it's very simple, and it's tied into the first effect of elimination of foreign aid. You see, we are able to have security partnerships and to have economic partnerships with nations that will allow us to have our embassies and to allow us to collaborate with their intelligence collection and their intelligence services because we are the good guy and we help people. And that is our reputation overall. That is our doctrine, is to do what's right and to help those less fortunate. It is the only moral thing to do. And when we get rid of foreign aid, you're going to see us kicked out of all these different countries. They have no reason to share intelligence with us anymore. But instead, they're going to work with countries like Russia and China, which will fill the void and will give them some foreign aid. Do you think that nobody's going to help them? Of course, that's not what's going to happen. Other bad actors are going to fill the void. It is depowering the United States with no promise that Russia, China, and other countries are going to play along with that decision. If we're the only ones who recede into isolationism, with no guarantee that other bad nations will also follow our lead, then essentially we're doing this by ourselves and we're screwing ourselves completely. We might as well close the CIA if we're going to get rid of foreign aid, if we're truly going to pull ourselves back as J.D. Vance proposes. That's the real world effect. It will kill Americans on top of those being killed throughout the world because we no longer help the rest of the people on this planet with things like disease and vaccination and giving them clean water. So the third and final result of this extremist ideology, this new conservatism or this new right movement that J.D. Vance is trying to put into place, this extreme isolationism where every nation has to fend for themselves and nobody helps each other, and the little nations get screwed and the big nations get to take over smaller ones and consume the world for themselves in a very selfish and callous manner. We get rid of morality. We get rid of right versus wrong. We get rid of the idea that human beings are connected across all geographic lines, no matter where they are. Because the rights that identify us under the Declaration of Independence, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, they are given to us by God, by a higher power, or if you're an atheist, simply by virtue of being born as a human being. They are not given to you because you are born behind this state border, or in America versus Canada, or in America versus Europe, or in North America versus Africa. And this is what our founding fathers told us. It is also what our ethics teach us. And if you're going to say that people in other parts of the world don't matter and we're going to ignore them, then you fundamentally eliminated, I believe, what is the core character of our American society and as humans in general. I think of Martin Luther King when he said that we're all tied together in a single garment of destiny, that I cannot be what I ought to be if you cannot be what you ought to be. Abraham Lincoln said what is stated in the Declaration of Independence, those are human rights that apply everywhere. They are not rights that apply only to Americans. And Ronald Reagan also recognized during his struggle against communism and totalitarianism during the Cold War that every person is entitled to freedom and democracy, self-determination, to practice their religion, to be who they are, and to have freedom of conscience. Fundamentally, we become less human and we devolve rather than evolve in following this barbaric and callous doctrine. I hope that you can see everything that is eliminated and all of the cost and all that is laid in vain when you start talking about extreme isolationism. It's like somebody with a shotgun walking by a rape and doing nothing. I'm going to use that weapon to stop what's wrong, and I'm going to help the guy who's starving in the corner when I have food. I will fight for that no matter what it takes. So I hope you see how dangerous J.D. Vance is and what he will do for power. We must fight against this. We must accept our obligations as the most powerful and prosperous nation on earth to lead by example, to make this world a better place, a more loving place, a more compassionate place. God bless America, God bless Ukraine, and thank you all for joining. Keep up the fight.